Day 16 of the conflict, May 2026. The illusion of a lightning victory, the fantasy that Donald Trump could crush Tehran in 72 hours, has just been incinerated in the flames of Kharg Island. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing right now is not just another Middle East skirmish. This is the beginning of the end of an empire's dominance. A superpower that once moved nations like chess pieces has slammed headfirst into the steel wall of Iranian resistance, and it is bleeding. In a desperate gamble to salvage his collapsing image, Trump has ordered the largest direct amphibious assault on Iranian territory since the Iran-Iraq War. American Marines, supported by carrier strike groups, have attempted a full-scale landing on Kharg Island, Iran's most critical oil hub. What they found was not glory, but a meticulously prepared death trap. Hundreds of IRGC speedboats swarming like wolves, waves of suicide drones blotting out the sky, precision missiles raining down from underground launchers. Multi-million-dollar American warships and helicopters are being turned into burning scrap metal in real time. While Washington sinks deeper into this quagmire, its closest ally, Israel, is trembling on the edge of total collapse. Hezbollah, Hamas, and the axis of resistance are hitting from every direction. The once invincible Iron Dome is being overwhelmed. Israeli cities are living under constant air raid sirens. The American empire, accustomed to bullying weaker nations, is now facing a determined adversary that refuses to kneel. How did the world's most powerful military machine get humiliated so quickly? Why did Trump choose Kharg Island, a fortress designed to become a graveyard for invaders? Is this the moment the United States loses its unchallenged supremacy in the Middle East? And most importantly, can the U.S.-Israel alliance survive the firestorm they themselves ignited? In this special report, Shadow War Reports will dissect every critical development, expose the strategic blunders, reveal the terrifying power of Iran's asymmetric warfare, and show you why the so-called invincible empire is now digging its own grave in the Persian Gulf. The age of unchallenged American dominance is cracking, and the fractures are widening with every passing hour. If you want the raw, unfiltered truth that mainstream media refuses to show you, smash that like button right now, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is information warfare, and you're on the front lines. Welcome to Shadow War Reports. The truth is rarely comfortable, but it is necessary. As the conflict between the U.S.-Israel coalition and Iran enters its 16th day, the illusion of a swift American victory has completely evaporated. What began as Donald Trump's ambitious 72-hour lightning plan has now transformed into a brutal war of attrition, with American forces bleeding heavily in the waters and shores of Kharg Island. The turning point came when Trump, facing mounting domestic pressure and a collapsing reputation, authorized a high-risk direct amphibious assault on Kharg Island, Iran's strategic oil heartland and one of the most heavily fortified locations in the Persian Gulf. This decision marked a dangerous escalation from limited airstrikes to a full-scale ground operation on Iranian sovereign territory. In the early hours of May 14th, multiple carrier strike groups, including the USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Abraham Lincoln, moved dangerously close to the Strait of Hormuz. Over 200 landing craft, supported by CH-53K King Stallion helicopters and V-22 Osprey tilt rotors, began their approach toward Kharg Island. The Pentagon believed that overwhelming firepower and air superiority would secure the island within hours. They were wrong. As the American formation entered the kill zone, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps unleashed a coordinated asymmetric assault. Hundreds of fast attack speedboats, operating in wolf pack formations, swarmed the larger American vessels. Armed with anti-ship missiles, torpedoes, and rocket launchers, these small but highly maneuverable boats exploited the blind spots of American Aegis destroyers and Phalanx close-in weapon systems. Simultaneously, waves of Shahed 136 suicide drones and low-altitude cruise missiles saturated the airspace. Iranian electronic warfare units jammed GPS signals and disrupted communications, leaving American pilots and naval commanders operating in partial blindness. Multiple CH-53K helicopters were struck by man-portable air defense systems fired from concealed positions along the coast, plummeting into the sea in flames. By the afternoon of May 14th, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The first wave of U.S. Marines who managed to reach the beaches encountered a nightmare scenario. Pre-planted minefields, booby traps, and interlocking fields of fire from fortified positions hidden among oil storage tanks and industrial facilities. Underground tunnel networks allowed IRGC fighters to appear, strike, and disappear, executing devastating hit-and-run ambushes. Initial reports indicate at least 12 American aircraft and over 20 landing craft have been destroyed or severely damaged. Estimates of U.S. casualties are still classified, but sources close to the Pentagon admit the numbers are rising sharply with each passing hour. The cost in destroyed equipment already exceeds several $100 million. Meanwhile, on the Western Front, Israel faced its own crisis. With American attention and resources diverted to Kharg Island, Hezbollah and Hamas launched coordinated saturation attacks. Over 800 rockets and drones were fired into Israeli territory within a 24-hour period. The Iron Dome system, already strained, struggled to intercept the sheer volume of incoming projectiles. Several strikes hit critical infrastructure near Haifa and Tel Aviv. The U.S.-Israel coalition's greatest weakness has been exposed: poor coordination and conflicting objectives. While Washington seeks a limited conflict to force Iran to the negotiating table, Israel demands total neutralization of the Iranian threat. This strategic disconnect has left both nations vulnerable. As night fell on May 15th, American forces remained pinned down on the beaches of Kharg Island, unable to advance inland. Supply lines are under constant threat, and air superiority, once taken for granted, is now fiercely contested. The so-called superpower has walked directly into a trap it helped create. What was supposed to be a demonstration of American strength has instead become a humiliating showcase of Iranian resilience and tactical ingenuity. This is no longer a war of choice for Washington. It is rapidly becoming a quagmire that threatens to consume not just military resources, but America's global credibility itself. While the United States continues to rely on multi-billion-dollar platforms and cutting-edge technology, Iran has perfected a completely different doctrine: asymmetric warfare rooted in self-reliance, ingenuity, and overwhelming cost-effectiveness. At the heart of Iran's defense is the Bavar 373 long-range air defense system. Often compared to Russia's S-400, this domestically developed platform has proven far more effective than Western intelligence predicted. With a detection range exceeding 450 kilometers and the ability to engage multiple ballistic and cruise missile targets simultaneously, the Bavar 373 has repeatedly intercepted American Tomahawk missiles and fighter jets. Complementing it is the Khordad 15, a highly mobile system capable of tracking stealth aircraft and launching missiles at targets up to 150 kilometers away. Together, these systems have created a dense, multi-layered air defense network that has denied the U.S. the total air superiority it expected. But Iran's real strength lies in its drone and missile forces. The Shahed 136 suicide drone, often called a flying bomb, has become a nightmare for American naval forces. Costing less than $20,000 per unit, these drones are launched in massive swarms, sometimes hundreds at once. Their low radar signature and ability to fly at wave-top height make them extremely difficult for Aegis destroyers to intercept. For the price of one American SM-3 interceptor missile, Iran can deploy hundreds of Shahed drones, creating an unsustainable economic asymmetry. The Fateh 110 and Zulfiqar short-range ballistic missiles form the backbone of Iran's precision strike capability. These solid-fuel missiles boast ranges of 300 to 700 kilometers, with accuracy within 10 meters. Most importantly, they are highly mobile and launched from underground silos or disguised transporter erector launchers. After firing, launch crews quickly relocate, making them nearly impossible for American satellites to track and destroy in time. Even more devastating is Iran's mastery of electronic warfare. Iranian forces have successfully jammed GPS signals across large areas of the Persian Gulf, severely degrading the accuracy of American precision-guided munitions. Several U.S. reconnaissance drones have reportedly been hijacked or forced into autopilot mode, feeding false data back to command centers. This digital guerrilla warfare has turned America's technological advantage into a liability. What truly sets Iran apart is its network of underground facilities. For decades, the IRGC has constructed an extensive labyrinth of tunnels and hardened bunkers beneath Kharg Island and the mainland. These missile cities allow fighters to store, maintain, and launch weapons while remaining protected from airstrikes. American bunker buster bombs have proven largely ineffective against facilities buried hundreds of meters deep inside mountain rock. In stark contrast, the U.S. military remains heavily dependent on extremely expensive, high-maintenance systems. The F-35 stealth fighter, aircraft carriers, and advanced destroyers were designed for conventional wars against technologically inferior opponents. When confronted with low-cost, high-volume swarm attacks and sophisticated electronic jamming, these platforms become vulnerable and increasingly inefficient. A single American aircraft carrier costs over $13 billion to build, and billions more to operate annually. Yet Iranian speedboats and drones costing fractions of that amount are forcing these carriers to retreat further into the Gulf, limiting their operational effectiveness. This technological philosophy, combining domestic innovation, mass production of cheap weapons, and deep defensive infrastructure, has allowed Iran to neutralize much of America's conventional superiority. While Washington spends millions to destroy single targets, Tehran overwhelms the system with volume and adaptability. The battlefield reality on Kharg Island proves one undeniable truth. In modern warfare, technology alone is not enough. Iran has shown that a determined nation with the right mix of asymmetric tools and strategic depth can challenge even the most powerful military on Earth. The age of unchallenged technological dominance is over. We have now reached the critical turning point of this conflict. On the night of May 14th, into the early hours of May 15th, the United States lost control of the battlefield over Kharg Island. What was supposed to be a decisive demonstration of American power became the moment the empire's momentum shattered. The breaking point came when Iranian electronic warfare units completely blinded American radar and GPS systems across the landing zone. With communications disrupted and satellite guidance jammed, U.S. forces suddenly found themselves fighting blind. At the same moment, the IRGC launched its largest swarm attack of the war. Over 400 suicide drones and low-altitude missiles struck simultaneously from multiple directions. The American Aegis destroyers and phalanx systems were completely overwhelmed. Designed to handle dozens of threats, they faced hundreds. One by one, multi-million-dollar vessels began taking direct hits. Several transport ships carrying vital supplies and reinforcements were sunk before they could reach the beachhead. CH-53K helicopters loaded with Marines were torn apart mid-air by coordinated man-pads fire. This was the exact moment the illusion died. The U.S. could no longer guarantee air superiority. The promised rapid advance inland collapsed. American Marines on the beach found themselves pinned down under relentless mortar and rocket fire from an invisible enemy moving through underground tunnels. What Pentagon planners called Phase 2 never materialized. The domino effect is now in motion. Military failure is rapidly turning into logistical nightmare, then psychological breakdown. Commanders on the ground are reporting severe difficulties maintaining cohesion as casualties continue to mount. If this situation continues over the next 24 to 48 hours, American forces risk being trapped in a deadly kill zone with limited escape routes and shrinking supplies. This is the harsh reality most mainstream channels refuse to report. The turning point has arrived. The hunter has become the hunted, and the cost of this miscalculation may prove far higher than Washington ever imagined. While Iranian forces continue to inflict heavy damage on Kharg Island, Washington finds itself trapped in a dangerous strategic dilemma of its own making. Donald Trump, who entered this conflict promising a quick and decisive victory, is now facing a nightmare scenario. The Pentagon's initial plan for a lightning campaign has collapsed, forcing the White House into an all-or-nothing gamble. Instead of cutting losses and seeking de-escalation, Trump has doubled down, pouring more American lives and resources into the Kharg meat grinder. Sources inside Washington report growing panic among senior officials who fear this operation could become America's biggest military humiliation since Vietnam. The United States is no longer fighting with confidence, but with desperation. Aircraft carriers have been forced to pull back from high-threat zones due to Iran's anti-ship missile threat. Logistics are stretched thin, and every additional day of fighting drives up costs that threaten to explode the U.S. defense budget. Trump's promise of America first is now colliding with the brutal reality of an unwinnable war. Meanwhile, America's closest ally, Israel, is being left increasingly exposed. With U.S. attention and firepower concentrated on Kharg Island, Tel Aviv has been forced to face the full wrath of the axis of resistance alone. Hezbollah and Hamas have intensified attacks across multiple fronts, overwhelming Israel's defenses. The once celebrated Iron Dome is running dangerously low on interceptors, and Israeli society is descending into panic with widespread evacuations and economic paralysis. This situation has exposed deep fractures within the U.S.-Israel alliance. Washington wants a limited war to bring Iran to the negotiating table, while Netanyahu's government demands total destruction of Iran's capabilities. These conflicting objectives have created serious coordination failures, leaving both nations weaker. Even more damaging is the crumbling support from America's traditional Gulf allies. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, countries that once hosted major U.S. military bases, are now quietly distancing themselves. After witnessing Iranian missiles penetrate Patriot systems and American forces struggling on Kharg Island, these nations no longer trust Washington's security umbrella. Several have begun secret diplomatic contacts with Tehran to protect their own interests, refusing to allow their territory to be used for further attacks on Iran. The United States, long accustomed to leading a united coalition, is now becoming dangerously isolated in the very region it once dominated. The so-called strongest alliance in the world is showing unmistakable signs of strategic fatigue and internal division. America's military adventure has not only failed to intimidate Iran, it has accelerated the erosion of its own influence across the Middle East. As the United States sinks deeper into the Kharg Island quagmire, Russia and China are playing a calculated and increasingly decisive role in reshaping the geopolitical landscape. While neither Moscow nor Beijing has committed direct combat troops, their indirect support for Iran has been substantial and sophisticated. Russia has provided critical intelligence, advanced electronic warfare technology, and key components for Iran's missile and drone programs. This assistance has helped the IRGC maintain its devastating asymmetric capabilities even under heavy pressure. China, on the other hand, has emerged as Iran's economic lifeline. Despite Western sanctions, Beijing continues to purchase large volumes of Iranian oil, providing Tehran with the financial oxygen it needs to sustain a prolonged conflict. Chinese merchant vessels have also reportedly helped circumvent Western naval blockades in the Persian Gulf. Behind closed doors, Beijing is said to be supplying dual-use technologies, satellite communications support, and strategic raw materials. More importantly, both Russia and China are using this crisis to accelerate the decline of American unipolar dominance. Moscow views the conflict as a perfect opportunity to tie down U.S. military resources far away from Europe and Ukraine. By keeping America bogged down in the Middle East, Russia reduces the pressure on its own western flank. China's strategy is more long-term and economic. Beijing is carefully observing how the U.S. military performs in a high-intensity conflict against a determined regional power. The weakening of America's prestige in the Gulf directly serves China's ambitions in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. Every American ship damaged or forced to retreat in Hormuz sends a powerful message globally. American military supremacy is no longer absolute. This conflict has effectively become a major proxy escalation. The Iran-Russia-China axis, sometimes referred to as the new resistance bloc, is testing the limits of American power without triggering direct superpower confrontation. North Korea is also reportedly contributing by supplying artillery shells and ballistic missile components, further expanding this anti-hegemonic network. The geopolitical message is clear. The era of America acting as the world's unchallenged policeman is coming to an end. While Washington burns resources and credibility on Kharg Island, Russia and China are quietly building a new multipolar order based on energy, technology, and strategic partnerships. The United States is no longer fighting just Iran. It is confronting an entire bloc of nations determined to dismantle the old Western-dominated world order. In the end, the most powerful weapon on the battlefield of Kharg Island is not a missile, a drone, or a radar system. It is the unbreakable human will. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is not fighting with machines alone. They are fighting with something far more dangerous: deep national conviction, religious faith, and an iron determination to defend their homeland. For these men, this is not just another war. This is a sacred defense of their soil, their dignity, and their right to exist as a free nation against foreign aggression. While American soldiers are sent into battle following political orders from Washington, IRGC fighters operate with a completely different mindset. They fight for survival, for their families, for their revolution, and for their God. This spiritual and national motivation has turned every meter of Kharg Island into a deadly fortress. Fighters willingly hide in tunnels for days, endure relentless bombing, and launch suicide missions without hesitation. Their morale remains high even under extreme pressure. This is the fundamental difference the Pentagon failed to calculate. American war planners believed that superior technology and overwhelming firepower would break Iranian resistance within days. They were wrong. History has repeatedly shown that no amount of smart bombs or aircraft carriers can defeat a nation that has decided it will not surrender. On Kharg Island, this spirit is visible everywhere. IRGC units continue coordinated counterattacks despite heavy losses. Snipers remain motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. Engineers repair damaged launchers under fire. Young fighters chant slogans of resistance as American helicopters burn in the sky. This is not the behavior of a defeated army. This is the behavior of a people who have accepted sacrifice as the price of freedom. In contrast, American forces are showing clear signs of strain. Marines pinned on the beaches face not only physical danger, but also a growing psychological burden. They were told this would be a quick operation. Instead, they find themselves in a hellish war of attrition against an enemy that refuses to break. Technology can be jammed. Weapons can run out of ammunition. But the human will to resist, when rooted in faith and national honor, is almost impossible to destroy. This is Iran's greatest strength. While America fights with dollars and algorithms, Iran fights with its soul. And on the battlefields of the Middle East, the soul is proving far more powerful. What is happening on Kharg Island is no longer just a regional conflict. It is a historic turning point that is reshaping the entire global order. The United States, once the undisputed superpower capable of imposing its will anywhere on Earth, is now watching its authority crumble in real time. The disastrous campaign in the Persian Gulf has exposed the limits of American military power and accelerated the transition from a unipolar world to a multipolar reality. This war has forged a stronger and more coordinated resistance bloc. Russia and China are not merely observers. They are strategic partners actively benefiting from America's entanglement. While the U.S. burns billions in the Gulf, Russia gains breathing room in Europe, and China strengthens its position in Asia. Their support for Iran, through weapons technology, intelligence, economic lifelines, and diplomatic cover, demonstrates a new model of alliance that challenges Western dominance. North Korea has also joined the equation, reportedly supplying missiles and artillery shells, further expanding this anti-hegemonic network. What began as an Iran-Israel conflict has evolved into a global proxy confrontation between the declining Western order and the rising forces of a multipolar world. The impact on America's alliances is equally devastating. NATO is showing signs of hesitation, while traditional Gulf allies are quietly distancing themselves from Washington. Even Israel, America's most important partner in the Middle East, is paying a heavy price for its dependence on U.S. protection. As American resources are consumed in Kharg Island, Tel Aviv finds itself increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The old era, where Washington could launch wars, enforce sanctions, and control global energy routes with impunity, is fading. The petrodollar system is under growing threat. Nations worldwide are watching carefully. If America cannot defeat Iran, a much smaller and sanctioned nation, how can it confront bigger challenges in the future? Kharg Island has become a symbol of resistance, a symbol of imperial overreach, and most importantly, a symbol of the end of unchallenged American hegemony. The world is changing faster than many expected. A new order is emerging from the smoke of war, one where sovereignty, strategic autonomy, and national will carry more weight than military budgets and aircraft carriers. The American empire is not just losing a battle on a small island in the Gulf. It is losing its grip on the world. The battle for Kharg Island has become far more than a military confrontation. It is the moment the world witnessed the beginning of the end of American dominance in the Middle East. Donald Trump's arrogant gamble has backfired spectacularly. The so-called superpower, once feared and unchallenged, is now bleeding in the waters of the Persian Gulf. Its technology has been neutralized, its alliances are fracturing, and its aura of invincibility has been shattered by the unbreakable will of the Iranian people. Kharg Island stands today not just as an oil hub, but as a graveyard for imperial ambitions. What we are witnessing is historic. The decline of unipolar power and the rapid rise of a new multipolar world order. The American empire is digging its own grave, and Iran has handed it the shovel. Now it's your turn to speak. What do you think will happen in the next 72 hours? Will the United States retreat in humiliation, or will it escalate this conflict into something even more dangerous? Can Israel survive without full American protection? Or is this the beginning of the end for the U.S.-Israel alliance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The most insightful comments will be pinned. If this report opened your eyes to the truth mainstream media refuses to show, smash that like button, share this video with everyone who needs to see it, and subscribe to Shadow War Reports right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a critical update. This fight is far from over. In our next report, we will expose the worst-case scenario for America. What happens if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz completely? Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant. The world is changing before our eyes. This is Shadow War Reports, bringing you the truth, no matter how uncomfortable.